My name is Kathy Baumgartner-Hetrick, and Steve Philippi and I undertook a very large project this year of the 250th anniversary of Palmyra. We have decided to do some oral histories of people who have lived in Palmyra. Most of them are over the age of 80 or 85, and we asked them to tell us their story about Palmyra so that we could put together a DVD that you're going to watch now that has the stories of Palmyra based on the people who have lived here. We hope you enjoy it. We've had a fun time doing it, and we think you'll learn a lot about Palmyra and the history of Palmyra through the stories of Palmyra. Okay, so tell us your name then.
Edith Blouch.
Okay, and Edith, you were born
in Gravel Hill, North Londonderry Township, August 15th, 1916. I'm 94.
94. What was Palmyra like back in 1917?
Well, I lived in the country, and of course I didn't find out too much about it until I went into town to school. But I went 12 years to school because he had no country school back there.
Okay.
There on Route 117. Now there were 4 farmers living out there, and they paid to have us go to Palmyra school.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, how many children were in that group?
Well, there's the Forney farm and the Goodman farm and our farm, and then down below was the Coble farm. So there were 4 families there.
Okay. And then where was the school then when you came in? Did you have to walk in?
Or walk to school every day. Yes, the Forneys and the Goodmans, all of us walked to school every day.
And that was at the Railroad Street building? Is that where it was?
Palmyra School.
And all of them right in that Railroad Street building. Okay. Did they have like one class per year, or?
No, it was Miss Turby's class in 1st grade and Miss Irene, and I just loved Miss Irene. I knew right then that I'm going to be a teacher.
When you were in 2nd grade? In 1st grade? In 1st grade.
That's how
Miss Irene.
I knew I was going to be a teacher.
Was that her last name?
Bixler.
Oh, Irene Bixler. Okay.
We call her Miss Irene.
Miss Irene. Okay. So then you went through Palmyra.
Right.
And then where did you go after you graduated? Where did you do your college work?
I decided to go to the town college and get my teaching. But I was, last year, they only had to have 2 years to teach. Only 2 years of college. The next year you had to have 3 years. The next year you had to have 4 years. So I went my 2 years to college there and then started teaching.
And did you start back in Palmyra District then?
No. Depression time, and schools were very scarce. I was in the Lancaster. I didn't want country school. I wanted grade school. But I went in the country in Lancaster County looking for schools. I couldn't find any. Then I heard up at Dauphin County at Sandy Hollow there's a school that there's a vacancy. So in September, in April, they only had 8 months school. And they closed school up and out there, and they said, no, we need a man, because the last day of school, the children took mud and threw it in the building, and the walls were all spattered with mud.
Oh, no.
So they said, no, we need a man. And Alan Boucher came that spring, and said, we have a vacancy at Nafsingers, and that's where I started.
Now tell us about Nafsingers, because that's a new term for younger people in Palmyra. Tell us about Nafsingers and tell us about the country schools.
Well, there were 4 country schools in North Londonderry Township, Nafsingers and Gravel Hill and Longs. They were all north, and then Huffers was south. That's torn away too. But the Nafsingers school was still standing, and of course the Gravel Hill, too. So I went there, and I was glad because it's in my home community, and I started teaching there then.
Now you were the only teacher there?
Right.
It was a one-room schoolhouse.
Right.
You had 8 grades.
Right.
How many students did you
have? Well,
have?
I had around 30 usually, till the very end when Forge Acres developed with all those buildings back there when the ground was sold, back there. That was so terrible with enrollment just sky high, and I couldn't manage them at all because there were too many of the smaller children from these young couples. So they changed and said 4th, 5th, and 6th over to Gravel Hill, and I just had the first 4 grades. But the last 4 years I was in National School, I had 44 children in my classroom every day, and out of the 44 one year, 33 were boys.
Oh my goodness, my goodness. Well, tell us what it's like to be a teacher with all those different ages.
And so, well, I only had 4 grades then, you know. And then somebody said, I said, well, I'm glad there were boys. I said, girls at the 2nd, 3rd grade level have these little cliques. I said, and I said, they don't work together. I said, but the boys go out and play ball. I said, they forget all about their, you know.
That's true.
Yeah. But then we closed, and then last year it was 33 boys.
So how long were you, that was about, what, 38 that you started there?
17 years. I was at the National School. And we were just like a big family because you had children year after year from the same family, you know. Right. One year I had 4 from the same family. Another family had 3 from the same family. And later on they intermarried, which was interesting. But it's...
the stories you could tell.
It's this closeness of relationship with the kiddies, you know, and the families. And we had our fun days. We really did. We was there was along the Quittava Hill down there was a little pasture, and the farmer said, you may go out there and take your lunch sometimes at dinner time and let the children roam around there. And we did. And we found a lot of turtles one day, and they said, let's have a turtle race. Well, you know how a turtle race goes. We had 4 of them, no turtle race. And then, of course, we found a gulp of tadpoles, eggs, and one of the boys said, oh, my dad can get that out for us. Let's bring it to school. So we got a great big wash tub I took out to this farmer, and he put this little gulp into the wash tub and brought it to school. We had that 4 days of school watching these little eggs. Oh, that was
Wasn't that exciting?
And then we took it back to the creek again. So things like that we could do, you know, together as a group. It was just gorgeous. But think of being a teacher and a mother and a nurse and a playground supervisor and a music supervisor. And one day I had to even be a truant officer. And one time I had to take a child home who was deathly sick around 11 o'clock, and I knew she'd never lay asleep. No telephone. It was frightening.
I bet.
You know,
I bet you were out there in the middle of nowhere, really.
And I could have a telephone if the people next door or across the street were there, but they were working all the time, you know. And I had no other telephone. So all I had to do was take her home, and halfway there my car stopped, and I looked a mess till I got back to school.
Well, who took care of the children while you were
I
taking
had to
them?
be by myself.
Oh my goodness.
You have to be by yourself. I said, 8th graders, you don't kind of take care. I said, this is very important. I said, please stay in your seats and wait to go to the bathroom if you have to go outside. I said, but please, and I coaxed them, you know, and they were okay. But I had fallen coming over. I took a shortcut across the hill instead of walking out around, so I get there quicker, and I fell, and I looked a mess when I got back to school. But the kiddies had a good laugh with all of them, so did I. Oh, it was funny.
But in a one-room school, my impression is that the older children do sort of watch over the younger.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
and they help in the teaching process.
And they're so motherly too, because I know that one family with 4 in the family, you know, there was an 8th grader and a 7th grader and a 6th grader, you know, 3 right after.
Right in a row.
So, and they were very lovely to count on to do things like that.
Now, then what about the middle 50s is when they closed those schools?
Well, and then Roman got that heavy, yes, and then they closed the school. And then we went into Palmyra as a jointure. And all the grade children went into Railroad Street building. And I was assigned.
Okay,
I was assigned room 6, and that's where I was in 3rd grade as a student.
Oh, you're kidding! In the Railroad Street building.
Then I was assigned in that room, and I was a teacher then in 2nd grade. So I was there 6 years, and then. After the 6 years, South Londonderry joined up with us, and then we became Palmyra Area School District.
Okay.
And
so it was Palmyra, then North Londonderry joined them first.
North Londonderry joined first, and they were a jointure.
Okay.
And then the South Londonderry School had the Campbelltown School and the Lawn School.
Okay.
They had closed there and put those two schools together. So they joined us then, and then we became the Palmyra School District.
Okay.
And that's how that happened then.
Right. And then when did you move down? You were always teaching second grade when you were in the railroad building.
Yes,
Okay.
and then in October of 1958, 12 classrooms of the railroad street building with the teachers walked down to Forge and opened Forge, the first elementary building in Palmyra.
Is that when that was, 1958? Because I remember walking down. I was in 4th grade, and I just never really picked on the date. You certainly dedicated your whole life to teaching young children.
It was wonderful.
And all of us who've been partakers of that certainly appreciate what you've done. It's great.
The last day I walked out of school, left my key on the desk there. I thought, what in the world am I going to do without my children?
Oh, I bet. This was a wonderful experience. Thank you for sharing this for the past half hour. I really, you put it all into perspective and chronological order there. I appreciate that.